Everyone and their grandparents knows what this is, don't lie to me. It goes without saying that Pac-Man is pretty iconic in the gaming world. You show anyone a yellow circle with a fraction taken out and they'll go,
"Oh hey, Pac-Man!"
However, since Pac-Man is a long-running franchise, that means there's a lot, and I mean a lot, of experimentation over the years. Some were not so successful, and others were successful. Then that brings us to today's topic, Pac-Man World Re-Pac. For the unaware, Pac-Man World was an attempt to basically bring the arcade character into a platformer. The question is, how do you turn this into this? Well, that's what we're gonna find out today. The series was successful enough to spawn 3 whole games. The first full game was initially developed for Pac-Man's 20th anniversary and exclusively made for the PS1. Recently, however, a remake of the first game came out titled Re-Pac, and because the first game was released in the 5th generation of consoles, it had plenty of jank to fix. Now, I know it's we're not covering the original version first, but I'm a newcomer to the series, so I'm going in completely blind. I figured trying the remake of the first game was the best route, seeing as it recently came out and it was 30 bucks anyways, so why not? Maybe I'll cover the original someday. But enough about my rambling, onto the game. The story isn't much to write home about, but it gets the job done. Pac-Man's family and friends are basically setting up a surprise birthday party for him. How old is he turning? Who knows? Anyways, unknown to the Pacs, the 4 ghosts are secretly watching them. It's revealed that they're here to capture Pac-Man, but seeing all the other Pacs, they get confused and just capture them all in various goofy ways. Pac-Man comes home, but to a crash party rather than a surprise one. He sees posters saying to meet the real Pac-Man in Ghost Island. Knowing this, he sets off to Ghost Island to save his family. It's revealed that the whole mastermind behind this is Talkman, a robot imposter of Pac-Man if you will. He's basically sick of Pac-Man getting all the attention and wanted to capture him. However, that clearly didn't go as planned. So Talkman now plans to stop Pac-Man from rescuing his family, and Pac-Man has to stop him. It's very simple, but it gives us a good main objective, and that's all I'm really asking for in a game like this. However, something's up about Miss Pac-Man over here. Wait, what? Yeah, so they completely gutted Miss Pac-Man and just replaced her with this Walmart version of her, Pac-Mom. But why? Well, if you want a really good explanation, there's a really good video explaining exactly what happened to Miss Pac-Man. But if you want the short version, for the sake of simplicity, let's just say they're divorced. So, while I do say that this game is a 3D platformer, it kinda isn't, but it also kinda is. You're probably confused, so let me explain. While you do get full 360 control of Pac-Man and you're not locked to a 2D plane, the camera angle is fixed. It basically stays in one angle almost the entire game and you can't change it, unlike your usual 3D platformer. But this doesn't take any points out of the game as long as the gameplay still feels great. And it does. Pac-Man is responsive and tight, and he has a pretty robust moveset to top it all off. You've got the standard movement and jumping, but you've also got the butt bounce. When you're in midair, you basically press a jump button in midair to come crashing down, but you hit the ground and gain more high as a result. Not only is this useful for reaching the higher platforms, but it can also be used to attack enemies. Man, it's just satisfying to do this, and the added rumble just makes this feel all the more satisfying, you know? But in some cases, some enemies can't be bounced on. This is where the power pellet comes in. You know those yellow dots they pick up? They're not actually useless. Picking these up adds to your ammo to your other attack, which is basically throwing your pellets. While I find it a bit awkward to use, it's pretty useful for bosses and even certain enemies like these blowtorches over here. If you hold the button long enough, you can charge these up to make them explode. You also have the rev roll. With this you can basically use this rev up and gain some really nice speed to make certain jumps. It's very situational, but you can also use it for attacking enemies viably, which is nice. And lastly, you have the flutter jump. This one is useful but feels like a band-aid applied to a mortal wound. Again, it's useful in certain situations where you can adjust your position so you don't fall to your death, but in other levels the shadows are casted incorrectly so you end up falling to your death anyways. Other than that, the adventure is pretty standard as far as platformers like these go. You basically have to clear each level in each world or the boss fight to cap it off in the end. Though what sets this game apart from the rest is that there's a hub world and where each of the worlds are connected, but you can tackle the worlds in any order you want. I opted going for an order because I'm a basic fucker, but it's not to give you the option to do so. A really cool thing about this game is how they took certain arcade elements and translated it to a platformer, like the fruits. In World, they not only add to your score, but they also let you unlock certain doors, which can range from switches to progress to a certain area, keys to free your family, power-ups, or these maze levels. Let's get this out of the way, I don't like these maze levels. I get that it's literally the part of Pac-Man, but the way it's executed here is just not good. My problem here is that they constantly throw obstacles at you, which is a problem in the game mode where you just have to be constantly moving. Sure, it's maybe not too hard once you get used to it, but it's a change I just don't like at all. So I do not bother with these at all. It's not like I'm getting the completionist route anyways, power-ups. There's not much in this game, but they're like a nice little addition to spice things up. The first and the most obvious one is the power pellet. Eat one of these and you'll basically become big, and these ghosts turn blue and become edible. You'll find these in sections where these ghosts that are basically normally invisible to your attacks, and it's also a good way to boost your score. I also really like how the music changes when you get these, and you get this really cool effect around you. Really adds to a power up. The last one is the metal pellet, which is literally just metal mar from Mario 64. You become coated in metal, you fall faster, etc. This game uses it for either killing enemies also coated in metal, or for finding extra goodies in those chests underwater, as you can actually butt bounce in the water with this power up. And finally, we've got the score. Now, in most cases, scores don't really matter too much, at least to me. It's not completely useless, but it's usually just there, you know? Pac-Man World, however, actually makes use of this. At the end of every level, you get warped into the slot machine area. This is where you can spin a slot for a chance at extra lives with the tokens you found in the level, but this is where also your score gets tallied. Basically, all the food and pellets you've collected add on to your current score, and for every 10,000 points, you get an extra life. It's not anything mind-blowing, but damn is it a good incentive to shoot for a higher score, and it's a really good way to interrogate the arcade game mechanic into a platformer. Aside from that though, there's also the bosses are actually pretty decent in this game. While I haven't played the PS1 original, I've heard that those are the weakest part of the game, mainly the second boss. So, how do they fare here? Pretty well, as I said before. The first boss is the flying airship with the eyes on the flag. The fight is pretty simple, you just have to bounce on these switches to reflect these cannonballs. Do it a few times, and boom, dead. It's not a bad boss, but it's not good either. The chase sequence at the start is nice though. The second boss is this huge mummy thing, Anubis Rex. The first phase is another chase sequence, but this time it's from behind. After that neat little segment, the second phase begins. All you have to do is just revel on these platforms until they break, and then revel into the heart. Repeat it a few times, and done. You do have to adjust some more obstacles as the fight goes on, which is a nice added challenge that never feels unfair. The third boss is pretty neat as well. It's basically this huge Galga-esque shooter segment where you basically just have to get through the enemies. Power pellets basically beef up your fire temporarily, and in the end you have to fight this huge thing. This part is alright, not a fan of mashing the button if this huge beam gets you, but it's a short and sweet fight, and it doesn't drag on for too long. The fourth boss is probably my favorite, the Clown Pre. For this boss, you have to raise a bunch of clowns in the first person view. Not only do the car controls feel nice and responsive, but you can also knock off the clowns as well. The power pellets basically make you big, and you can basically knock the clowns off the map while in this form. The first person view really adds to it. And the fifth boss is also pretty good. It's basically this huge robot thing, and you have to basically navigate this conveyor while trying to find a metal pellet. After you get the metal pellet, just revel into the robots and repeat a few times. However, the more you progress, the more the robot gets attacky, like this huge beam over here, which is nice. I also like how before every boss, pac-man will show up to taunt you before doing some magic shit to get the bosses to summon or whatever. Speaking of, the final boss, pac-man. But before that, remember how I said you could find keys for your family members? Well, that plays a huge part in this fight. Throughout this fight, if you ever reach one health bar, they'll throw you another one to fully replenish your health. The more you're free, the more you can fuck up. Though, it is possible to do this fight without freeing them all. Anyways, pac-man here has 3 phases. The first one is pretty simple, you just dodge his attacks. In the second phase, pac-man basically goes to metal, and it's basically a waiting game until he launches this cannon barrage at you, and then you get a metal pellet and then just go ham on him before the power up runs out. Then, in the final phase, he basically combines 2 power pellets. Is that even legal? And it becomes huge. From there on out, you can basically crawl and damage one of his feet 3 times. He falls, then you climb on top of his head and bounce on him. He does get some new attacks like the stomp that sends shockwaves, but it's pretty easy to cheese this if you keep on throwing power pellets. As long as you have enough family members to replenish you, who cares? After that, Pac-Man gets slapped, he eats a power pellet, unnecessary quicktime event, and a boss. Overall, this fight is very meh for a final fight. It's not bad, but I really do think the regular boss fights did a much better job. Anyways, the ending reveals that pac-man was just a lonely ghost who wanted attention because nobody loves a ghost. Pac-Man then chomps on a power pellet, eats him, and then tumbles to the camera while giving the most shit-eating grin ever. People don't really like this ending, but I don't really mind it. I mean, if someone stole something near and dear to me and just said I wanted attention, I'd probably strangle them. But if you freed all the family members, Pac-Man then forgives the ghost through the power of friendship. Yay! Basically, if you want the best ending, don't free all the family members. Graphically, Re-Pac looks pretty nice. It's obviously not anything mind-blowing, but I still do like how the game looks, especially in the level teams. I love how the last world is based literally a haunted mansion, and it makes sense because the final boss is a ghost. That's neat attention to detail I like. I also love how every world has enemies teamed specifically for that world, like these little blowtorches in the factory world, and so much more. I also like how expressive Pac-Man is here. Sure, he's smiling most of the time in game, but I like how they gave him little expressions for things like standing on a moving platform and other emotions during the pre-boss fight cutscenes. It's neat stuff. But the big one, how does the game perform? I am playing the game on the Switch after all, and seeing as the game is a 3D Unity game, I was a bit concerned. After all, 3D Unity games tend to be sort of jank on the Switch. One thing Re-Pac does offer is graphical modes. Resolution mode basically keeps the game at a higher resolution, but locks the frame rate at 30 FPS, while the second option, performance mode, lowers the resolution, but it bumps up the frame rate to 60 FPS. I personally prefer the scene resolution mode, because the 60 FPS never really felt consistent compared to 30 FPS. Well, most of the time. The clown pre-boss fight dropped frames pretty badly, but otherwise it was great. In the end, it's up to you to decide which mode you want to play with. Well, if you're planning on getting the Switch version, that is. The music is probably one of my favorite parts of this game. It's not something that'll make your hearts explode, but it's still pretty damn good. As a result, you get a pretty great soundtrack. It's also worth knowing that the versions used in game are used incorrectly pitched versions due to a bug in the original game that they didn't bother to fix. I'll leave a link to the correctly pitched version in the description. I still prefer the incorrectly pitched versions personally though. Pac-Man World is a pretty standard adventure, all things considered. It's nothing that's gonna blow you away, but it's a cool thing. Sure, it has a few flaws here and there, but I did very much enjoy my time with it. If you're looking for a 6-hour adventure, I suggest picking up a Re-Pac on whatever platform you desire. There isn't that much reason to check out the PS1 version these days unless you're really curious or nostalgic about it, seeing as Re-Pac pretty much fixes most of the flaws of that version. But then again, it's up to you. But with that said and done, I can say I'm officially interested in this series. I've heard some great things about Pac-Man World 2, with it being the best selling one as well. So who knows, maybe I'll like it more than the first one? Guess we'll find out. On second thought though, the PS1 version does have Pac-Man screaming, so